Hi all, I am super happy to be here. I'm glad there's a rug beneath me in case I pee a little. I also wanted to reiterate, two things. Frank Moore is backstage and he's the real deal. I saw he and his wife holding hands in the most loving way after being married for 70 plus years. And I thought, maybe in my next marriage I'll get that. Also, Aaron kind of broke the ice for me today because Aaron's from Detroit, and I was going to warn all you all that I'm from Detroit and something might come out of my mouth that, could be offensive. But, you Oregonians, you won't let me know if it's offensive anyway, so. Okay, so now that the disclaimers are out of the way, I'm a super big TED Talk fan, bordering on the nerdish, and I give a lot of talks generally, but a TED Talk is different because you have to be yourself. And so myself right now is all I think about morning, noon, and night is my business. And so I'm essentially giving you the business part of Lisa. And anyway, I was thinking about those TED Talks, and I saw Diana Nyad give her TED Talk recently about how she swam from Miami to Cuba and back again, and lost her arms in the process and had to swim back and get them, and And then I watched one about David Blaine learning to hold his breath for 17 minutes, and I got to thinking, I can hold my breath. Maybe not for 17 minutes. So this isn't going to be one of those inspiring TED Talks is what I'm trying to tell you. This is going to be about real, because I don't believe in perfect. I think perfect is the enemy of good enough. And when it comes to what I do believe in, this concept of real, it gets applied in your life every single day. And real doesn't paralyze you with fear. Perfect paralyzes you from doing what you need to do. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with where they thought a project had to be perfect. So they'd fall way behind on the timeline, and they would never say, hey, Lisa, I need some help with this, because they were so hung up on perfection. So I don't really feel like I have so much to say to you today that is better than anybody else. But I will say that I was asked to be here, so thank you, Claire, for asking me to be here today. I'm super honored, as I said, and I'm not a subject matter expert on perfect, so keep that in mind. About a year and a half ago, I left my relatively secure and relatively good paying job as a CEO of a grocery store in town called New Seasons Market. It was a fun job, I'll tell you that, it really was. And it was really scary to say, I'm gonna go follow my dreams and leave this secure thing while my daughter's in the process of going off to college. And so it seemed basically like a good idea before I did it. And like a lot of things in life, there are pros and cons, and there's tons of pros and cons to being an entrepreneur. I wish people would have told me these things before I started, and maybe I might have waited a little longer, so I'm gonna tell them to you now. And if it's okay for Jimmy Fallon to rip off all of David Letterman's bits, then it's okay for me to rip off Jimmy Fallon's bits. So here's my pros and cons of being an entrepreneur. Pro, you get to set your own hours. Con, long as they're between 7 a.m. and midnight, 7 days a week. I'm not gonna stand up here and tell you how tired I am. I'm really fucking tired. But as an entrepreneur, you work like slaves building the pyramids, which for some reason I'm totally obsessed with this idea now. Like, how did they get those things built? Why am I spending time on this? I don't know, but a lot of strange things have happened to me since I've been down this entrepreneurial path. I've developed an eye twitch, and and you'll oftentimes see me kind of going like this, and because who wants to invest money in a business in a twitchy person, like. And I've always been a pretty skeptical person because I guess I lived in Detroit and people were full of it. I'm not sure, but now I'm downright paranoid. And I'm of this mindset that being paranoid is a good business tool, because really only the paranoid survive in the startup world. I have 4 liens against my house. I didn't know you could have more than 1 lien against your house. And sometimes I find myself worrying about how it might get divvied up if the business doesn't work out. And I'm like, screw it, they can worry about that. But I guess at the end of the day, what I'm saying is when you put everything you have into your business, and everything is everything, like there's nothing left after this if it doesn't make. I have a backup plan, which is I bought a tent. But you can't take everything that everybody says at face value. You want to trust people, because trust is a good thing. But you have to trust and verify, because at the end of the day, those other people don't have the same lens on life that you do. They don't have their house on the line. They didn't put every penny they had into the business, so they might not ask the same questions you do, like, God, that seems like a ridiculous price for that. And, trying to understand making the business work through your eyes is really the most important thing. So ask questions is the bottom line there. Pro, you get to design and build your own store. That sounds pretty groovy. Con, you get to work with the city to get it done. I've been in the grocery business for 25 or 30 years. I started when I was 2. And I've probably worked I've had my hand in building 25 or 30 or so grocery stores just by myself, because I worked for Whole Foods before I worked for New Seasons, and I worked for some other places. So I built a lot of grocery stores. And the city has this way of making things challenging, and that's fine for big corporations. Make it challenging for Trader Joe's, make it challenging for Safeway, great. But when it comes to entrepreneurs in general, give us a concierge that we can have our hands held from the beginning to the day we open our store. I'll give you an example of something that happened while we were building our Green Zebra store, and that is we had to plant some swales. And the swales are the planting areas that capture the rain runoff so it doesn't go directly into the sewer system. And we were happy to do that. But the city bureau, we'll just call it City Bureau A, said, yes, those plants are the right plants. So we planted them. Then City Bureau B came in and said, no, those are the wrong plants. You have to unplant them. And so in the end, it cost us like $1,700 that we didn't have because we're a startup, and it cost us a lot of time and so on. So what I ask of our government is help entrepreneurs succeed. So pro, you get to try out a lot of new ideas. Con, you get to fail at trying out a lot of new ideas. I often hear people say, I actually appreciate that clapping, because I often hear people say, oh, I don't look at them as failures when I make mistakes. I look at them as learning opportunities. So I was thinking about GM and their faulty ignitions and the people that died, sadly, and I didn't think GM was looking at that as a learning opportunity. I'm pretty sure they're looking at it as a flat-out failure. And the bottom line is you just get really comfortable with failing a little bit every day. It's okay, just deal with it. It's all right. So I failed really big time early in the business, and I hired more people than the business needed. I projected my sales incorrectly, and so I had to make some layoffs. And that was incredibly painful because I had never had to lay anyone off before. I fired people before, but I never had to lay anyone off before. And there's, when you fire someone for poor performance, it almost feels a little bit good to get rid of them. But when you lay someone off because you screwed up the budget, it feels horrible, and it feels horrible for that person. And so I didn't look at that as a learning experience. I failed. And so the next door, I'm not going to do it again. But anyway, so yes, it was the right, sorry, I never stick to the teleprompter and I just kind of start talking and how's that for perfect? So, making that short-term decision in favor for the long-term view is what was right for the business. I firmly believe that, but at the time it was a failure and a mistake, and I own it. As a leader, the other thing you have to get really comfortable with is asking for feedback. People have blind spots, and you can't know your own blind spot. That's why it's called the blind spot. So you have to humble yourself and make people feel safe to tell you what your blind spots are. So do that all the time. It's a really good practice. Your business will be stronger. Okay, pro, it's super rewarding to do your own thing. Con, your thing is not your thing. Not that thing. The second you take $1 from someone else, it's not your business anymore. At that point in time, you have to get crystal clear that your job is to return provide a return on investment to those investors that invested in you. Your job is to work for those people that left other secure jobs. Your job is to work for the community. It's not about you. Don't have any delusions if you're entertaining the idea of becoming an entrepreneur. It's about being in service to others. So pro, all your years of experience are going to help you be successful. Con, most of the stuff you did before has nothing to do with what you're doing now. Just because I was a successful CEO at New Seasons Market doesn't mean that I know personally how to make this startup work. It's different. I have to set up systems from scratch, much like the Obamacare website, which was kind of the opening day at my store was a lot like that. And all the systems were generally built for me in the past. They might not have been the highest functioning systems, but they were there and built. But in a startup, you have to do it all yourself. And if you haven't done every single thing before, you're not going to know you have to do it. So what do you do when you're in a position where you're feeling totally hosed? I can tell you, you don't fake it till you make it at that point. You have to raise your hand and seek help and feedback from other people that are smarter than you and more experienced than you. You beg, you grovel, you prostitute yourself. I know. Yes. It works for some people. And eating crow isn't so bad because you might even find yourself admitting that you're not perfect. And we aren't. So pro, you get to be a change agent. Con, people hate change. It's one of the only things in life that's predictable is change and death and taxes and cellulite. So here's what I have to tell you about managing change and conflict. It's basically 3 steps. First of all, assume the other person has the best intentions. Every time, if you start there, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be a positive outcome. If you're unsure what their intentions are, ask them. 2, get really clear on what the business problem is that you're trying to solve. Because people get all teary and, the snot and the, You have to give them a tissue and wade through it all and get to that business truth that is necessary to move both the emotional person ahead and the business. And you literally have to ask, what is the business problem we're trying to solve? And then you have to listen really carefully. Because through that BS that people might have, their own personal stories of how they've been wronged and so on, there's a kernel of truth in there that applies to your business. And I'll give you a quick example. I had a staff member, I was at a staff town hall meeting, and the staff member said to me, I think we need to abolish the attendance policy. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why do you think that? And he said, well, I have to get up really early, and sometimes the what do you call it, the bridge is up, and I can't always get to work on time. And I said, oh, okay. And he said, and besides that, the attendance policy is unfair. And I said, well, what's unfair about it? And he said, well, some people get credits when they're late. They can apply a credit by coming in another day, early, and they can get this credit system. But full-time employees can't do it because they're already maxed out. There's no extra hours to get to apply for a credit. And so I had to listen to this guy talk about how unfair life was because his clock doesn't always work and the thing doesn't go up and he can't start his car and he has to feed his dog. I had to wade through all that to get to the kernel of truth, which was the attendance policy wasn't fair. And he was right. It was not fair and equitable. So I asked him, this is the next piece of what you do in conflict, what do you think we should do about it? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, maybe I should talk to a few other people. I said, that's a great idea. Why don't you get a small group of people together to talk about the attendance policy and come back to me with a proposal? The idea behind that is I don't have time to solve everybody's problems. And why would I want to when there's so many better ideas out there than my own? So, pro, you get to have fun at work every day. Con, there's no con to that. So I'm going to wind up my TED Talk today by sharing an experience I had at the store the other day. I was cashiering. I do a lot of cashiering, and I'm not a good cashier. I can't remember the produce codes. I'm really terrible. But this guy came through my line, and he was wearing a MMA tap-out shirt. And if you don't know what that is, it's this sport where you get in a cage and you beat each other up, and when you're next to dying, you go like this. And then you're like tapped out. And and so the guy said to me, or I said to the guy, are you a mixed martial artist? And he said, yeah, I am. I'm training for a really big fight in Los Angeles. And I said, oh, that's really cool. And he said, well, are you a mixed martial artist? And I said, well, I did try it once, but I didn't appreciate being punched in the stomach over and over again. But then he left the store, he left the store, and I got to thinking about that whole idea of being punched a lot. And I was thinking, I can take a punch, all right. I do it every day. I'm a battle-hardened entrepreneur. And I think I probably can smile and take a punch at this point. And so as a battle-hardened entrepreneur, I decided that putting yourself and everything you have on the line is just as heroic as holding your breath for 17 minutes or swimming from Cuba to Florida. Thank you.